Today we're fortunate to have Ms. Leah Pierce with us. She is a recent graduate of Auburn University's dietetics program. She's a dietetic internship student and a future registered dietitian. Ms. Pierce is going to talk to us today about her experiences with eating disorder. So what factors led to the development of disordered eating and ultimately an eating disorder?
Well, there's several factors. I would say that firstly, our media and our today's culture has a huge impact on eating disorders, and I know it did for me personally. And all throughout high school, I never was satisfied with my weight. I was always a little bit thicker, if you will. Being thin never came naturally to me. So I became interested in these fad diets and finding quick ways to manage weight. And it was nothing, really harmful at first, and then I went off to college where I was a part of a performing group, and each week you had to make weigh-in, and all that means is that you stepped on a scale in front of your peers, both male and female. You stood in your sports bra and shorts, and you had your weight and your BMI shouted out in front of everyone, and if your weight was not to their standard, you did not get to perform that week. It was a humiliating process and really kind of put a fire underneath me to find ways to quickly manage my weight, so that way if I ever had borderline numbers, I wouldn't be penalized for that. So it was really simple at first. It was just a couple of miles a day on the treadmill, cutting back on calories, switching to water, and before weigh-ins I would take a diuretic pill to help me if I was ever borderline. And that quickly turned into an obsession, to the point where I eventually was only eating one special K-bar a day, and I would smoke to curb my appetite, and eventually to the point where I abused laxatives and diet pills multiple times a day.
How would you categorize your eating disorder, and what health behaviors did you demonstrate?
I was diagnosed with bulimia nervosa, but there's several different types. There's anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and also binge eating disorder. So I was characterized as bulimia nervosa. I was restrictive with my eating during the week, 700 to 900 calories a day. On the weekend I did tend to purge more. On the weekend I did tend to binge more. And so during the week I had to compensate even more with laxatives and over-exercising countless hours a day, every day. I would weigh myself multiple times a day. It just was this crazy cycle that I couldn't get out of. Everything revolved around food and burning calories and taking calories in.
Describe your emotional state with bulimia.
I was pretty much a wreck. Inside, I struggled with depression. I had this irrational fear of gaining weight and being fat. It was just, I was mentally and physically exhausted. I mean, my whole world revolved around when I was going to eat, how much of it I could afford to eat, what I had to do to get rid of the calories I took in, when could I purge if there were people around, how would I get out of going out to eat with friends. Just this crazy cycle that I couldn't seem to get away from, and my hormones were so out of balance that I eventually stopped having a menstrual cycle, and so it was a crazy life cycle that I was living in.
Any outward signs that others noticed?
At first, no. I had gotten into a routine where no one really had to know what I was doing. Outwardly, I had a healthy weight. I had a perfectly healthy BMI. I've never looked emaciated. It wasn't until after I'd been married for a couple of years that my husband really started to notice my emotional distress and would voice a concern every now and then. But no, there was nothing, no really big red flags that you could see by just looking at me. It was a very secretive lifestyle. I had everything planned out so that way no one knew when I was purging or when I was binging.
What was your breaking point? When you decided that you needed professional help, what was that thing, the tipping point for you?
Well, I had been bulimic for almost 3 years, and I was helping my sister get ready at my parents' house for a pageant, and I went to slip on my clothes, and I could just feel the breakdown just start inside of me, and I just completely had an emotional breakdown in front of my parents and my sisters, and they were just so deer in headlights. They didn't know what was going on. And so after a couple of days had gone by, they had pulled me aside and told me that they thought that I needed help. And I was very, very defensive at first. I didn't think I really had a problem. I saw it as me just wanting to be healthy. And it wasn't until I was alone that I really thought about how I did want to get out of this crazy cycle and be healthy and be normal and not live this life of fear.
What treatment was effective for you?
Treatment that worked for me was, first off, my faith in Jesus. I had a wonderful support system, family support system, church support system. I had a wonderful dietitian who met with me weekly to help me reestablish healthy eating patterns and to make sure I was getting a well-balanced diet. And also, I had a medical doctor who prescribed an antidepressant for me to help regulate hormones again. And I also had a psychiatrist that I met with weekly, and we targeted the underlying issues that often are associated with eating disorders.
What advice would you have for someone who has an eating disorder or suspects an eating disorder in another person?
Well, firstly, we need to stop referring to each other as fat and get rid of the silly notion that a specific diet or body type or weight will give us happiness and fulfillment. And we need to stand up to the voices in our society and the media that tell us that a person's weight is an indicator of their character and their personality and value. We're so much more than a number on a scale.
So if any of you have a problem or know of someone who has a problem with an eating disorder, it's very important that help is sought outside of one's own abilities, because it's just not going to be helped on your own independently. And there are various places that can be sought out. Your physician, hospitals, local clinics, there are counseling centers that are ready and equipped to help you or someone that you suspect has an eating disorder. Thank you, Leah, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.